My name is Sadie, and I'm 29 years old. The house I worked so hard for in Portland represents everything I've built on my own. So when my parents showed up on my doorstep after 5 years of silence with the audacious demand that I sell it to pay off my sister's massive debt, I felt my world tilt sideways. The look in their eyes told me they actually expected me to agree. If you're watching this from a place where family loyalty is expected no matter what, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you've ever had to stand up to unfair family demands. My story might help you find your voice too. Growing up as the older sister to Amanda meant I learned responsibility early. From the time she was born when I was 4, it was clear she was the golden child. My parents, Thomas and Evelyn, made no secret of their favoritism. While Amanda received lavish birthday parties and expensive gifts, I received practical items and reminders to set a good example. Our house in the suburbs of Seattle projected the image of a perfect upper-middle-class family. Dad worked as a marketing executive, and Mom managed a boutique downtown. They cared deeply about appearances, which meant Amanda's ballet recitals and soccer games were family events, while my debate competitions and academic achievements warranted barely a mention at dinner. I learned to rely on myself by 3rd grade. When my science project needed supplies, I saved my allowance instead of asking parents who would sigh about the expense. By high school, I was working part-time at the local library, saving every dollar I could while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Meanwhile, Amanda crashed her first car at 16, and my parents replaced it without hesitation. "She's just finding herself," Mom would say when I questioned why Amanda faced no consequences. "Not everyone can be as naturally responsible as you, Sadie." Those words stung because they weren't a compliment but a dismissal. Being naturally responsible meant my hard work went unrecognized, while Amanda's mistakes were painted as part of some romantic journey of self-discovery. The most revealing moment came when I was preparing college applications. I'd always been told there was a college fund for each of us. I had my sights set on a finance degree, planning to supplement my education with scholarships. Then one night, I overheard my parents arguing. "We had to use some of Sadie's college money for Amanda's accident settlement," Dad was saying. "She doesn't need to know. She'll get scholarships anyway." The accident in question involved Amanda driving while texting, hitting a parked car. The owner sued, and my parents paid to make it go away. With my college fund, apparently. When confronted, they seemed more annoyed at being caught than remorseful. "You've always been the smart one," Mom said, as if intelligence negated my need for support. "Amanda needs more help than you do." Despite this betrayal, I pushed forward. I received a partial scholarship to Washington State University and worked 30 hours a week at a local bank while taking a full course load. During breaks, while Amanda traveled to Cancun and Europe on our parents' dime, I took extra shifts and internships to build my resume. Every holiday brought new stories of Amanda's escapades and expenses. She dropped out of community college after one semester because it wasn't her vibe. She started and abandoned 3 different career paths in 2 years. Each time, my parents covered the costs of her apartment, car, and living expenses. I kept my head down, graduated with honors, and secured a position at a financial consulting firm in Seattle. I built an emergency fund, contributed to my 401k, and began saving for a home. Meanwhile, Amanda opened a boutique with my parents' money, closed it 6 months later, and faced no consequences. The dynamic was clear. Amanda took, I gave. They enabled. I endured. It was a pattern that seemed unbreakable until one fateful Thanksgiving 5 years ago. Thanksgiving had always been my parents' showcase holiday. That year, I arrived with a bottle of wine and a promotion to celebrate. Nobody asked about my news. Instead, dinner conversation revolved around Amanda's latest crisis. She had maxed out 3 credit cards and needed cash fast. Over pumpkin pie, she turned to me. "Sadie, I know you're doing well at your job. Could you loan me $15,000? I'll totally pay you back." Before I could respond, Mom jumped in. "That's not too much to ask for your sister, right? Family helps family." 5 years of financial discipline and careful planning had taught me the value of money and the danger of enabling financial irresponsibility. For the first time, I didn't swallow my thoughts. No, I said simply. I won't do that. The silence was deafening. Amanda's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's face turned red. What do you mean, no? Mom asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I mean, no. Amanda has never paid back anyone in her life, and you've never made her face consequences. I'm not participating in this cycle anymore. What followed was 3 hours of emotional warfare. I was called selfish, cold, unloving. I was reminded of every time Amanda had been there for me. Emotionally, examples were notably sparse. Dad suggested my success had made me think I was better than family. The final blow came from Mom. If you can't help your sister when she needs it, then maybe you don't need to be part of this family. It wasn't said as an idle threat. It was an ultimatum. I looked at their faces, expectant, confident I would cave as I always had, and something shifted inside me. If that's how you feel, I'll respect your decision. I left that night and didn't look back. No calls were answered. No texts returned. The Christmas card I sent came back marked "Return to Sender." The message was clear: comply or be cast out. I chose independence. The 5 years that followed were transformative. I transferred to our Portland office for a promotion, doubled my salary through strategic career moves, and continued my disciplined saving. At 27, I purchased my first home, a modest 3-bedroom craftsman with a yard for the garden I'd always wanted. I built genuine friendships with people who valued me. I dated, had my heart broken, once healed, and kept growing. I created holiday traditions with my chosen family, friends who celebrated my successes instead of diminishing them. There were nights I cried for the family I'd lost, but I never regretted my decision. The silence from my parents was painful, but also peaceful. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next crisis or comparison. I was simply living on my terms. Then came that Saturday morning 5 years later when my doorbell rang. It was a crisp autumn morning. I was in my kitchen making coffee, still in pajamas, planning a day of gardening. The unexpected doorbell startled me. Through the peephole, I saw them, my parents looking older but unmistakable. My heart hammered against my ribs. 5 years of silence, and now they were on my doorstep. Had there been a tragedy? Was someone ill? Or had they finally come to make amends? I opened the door and time seemed to freeze. Mom's hair had more gray. Dad had gained weight. They looked like strangers wearing my parents' faces. Sadie, Mom said, her voice wobbling slightly. You look well. We stood in awkward silence until I stepped aside. Come in. They entered my home with the cautious steps of tourists in a foreign country. Their eyes swept over my living room with its comfortable furniture, built-in bookshelves, and large windows overlooking the garden. This is a nice place, Dad offered. You've done well for yourself. The compliment felt hollow. They hadn't come to admire my home. I led them to the kitchen, offered coffee, which they accepted, and waited. The small talk was painful. Comments about the weather, my garden visible through the window, the charming neighborhood. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Sadie, we need to talk about Amanda. Of course. 5 years of silence hadn't been broken for me, but because of Amanda. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She's in trouble, Mom added, clutching her coffee mug. Serious financial trouble. The story unfolded like a familiar book. Amanda had convinced them to help her start another business, a wellness spa. They had remortgaged their house to provide startup capital. She had taken out business loans, personal loans, and maxed out new credit cards. The business failed spectacularly within 18 months. How much? I asked, my financial mind automatically calculating. Dad looked away. $260,000. The number hung in the air between us. $250,000 gone. She also has some tax problems, Mom added quietly. She hasn't filed properly in 3 years. I nodded, waiting for the rest. They hadn't come just to share this news. We've done everything we can, Dad continued. Our retirement savings are gone. We had to take a second mortgage. We're at risk of losing our home. Mom reached across the table, her hand stopping short of touching mine. We know you're doing well. This house, it must have appreciated since you bought it. The request wasn't explicitly stated, but its shape emerged clearly. Are you asking me to sell my house to pay Amanda's debts? The words felt surreal leaving my mouth. Not the way you're putting it, Dad said defensively. We're asking you to help your family in a crisis. You could sell this place, give Amanda a fresh start, and buy something else later. Buy something else later. As if the years of saving, the careful budgeting, the weekends spent painting and renovating meant nothing. As if my home were just an asset to be liquidated for Amanda's benefit. Your sister is facing bankruptcy, Mom added. Maybe even worse if the tax issues escalate. We're family, Sadie. Family stands together. The family that had cut me off for 5 years was now defining family as an obligation to hand over my financial security. I sat in stunned silence as the magnitude of their selfishness washed over me. After my parents left that day, I sat alone in my kitchen for hours. Their demand echoed in my mind. Sell your house. Sacrifice. Your security. Clean up Amanda's mess. Again. Memories flooded back. Working double shifts during college while Amanda partied. Receiving a generic birthday card while Amanda got a car. Building my career with zero support while they bankrolled her every whim. For a moment, guilt crept in. Was I being selfish? Was family obligation more important than financial security? The programming ran deep. I called my best friend Julia. They want me to sell my house, I told her, my voice shaking. After 5 years of nothing, they show up asking for this. That's not love, Julia said firmly. That's exploitation. You don't owe them your financial future. Her words cut through the fog of guilt and obligation. I decided to approach this methodically as I would a client's financial crisis. I contacted my financial advisor, Maria, and scheduled an emergency meeting. I need an objective assessment, I told her. If I were to liquidate my assets to cover this debt, what would the impact be? Maria ran the numbers and looked at me gravely. Sadie, this would set your retirement back by approximately 15 years. The tax penalties alone for early withdrawal from your investments would be substantial, not to mention losing the equity you've built in your home during a strong market. What if it were your family asking? I pressed. Family is important, she acknowledged. But this isn't a temporary hardship. This is enabling behavior that will likely continue. If you do this, what happens when there's another financial crisis? Where will it end? With Maria's permission, I had her pull Amanda's credit report, as if considering her for a loan. What we found was worse than my parents had admitted. Multiple loans and collections. A pattern of opening credit cards, maxing them out, and abandoning them. Tax liens. Even a small judgment from a former landlord. This wasn't just bad luck or a failed business. This was a systematic pattern of financial irresponsibility and possibly fraud. That night I stood in my backyard looking at the home I'd created. The garden I'd planted seed by seed. The kitchen I'd renovated with my own hands. The office where I built my career. This wasn't just property. It was the physical manifestation of my independence and self-worth. I remembered the moment I'd received the keys, how I'd cried with joy and pride. I remembered the first night sleeping in my very own home, the peace I'd felt knowing I'd built this security for myself. The clarity came like sunrise. I would not set myself on fire to keep Amanda warm. Not again. Not ever. But I also wouldn't simply refuse. I would face this head-on with the financial expertise I'd spent years developing. I would offer real help, not a financial bailout that would solve nothing. I texted my parents, I'll meet you at your house next Saturday at 2 p.m. Amanda should be there too. The week that followed was filled with preparation. I compiled financial resources, bankruptcy information, credit counseling options, and a realistic debt repayment plan. I approached this as I would for my highest value clients with thoroughness and professionalism. Driving to my parents' house felt like traveling back in time. The suburban street looked smaller somehow. The house where I grew up had been repainted, but was otherwise unchanged. I parked behind Amanda's car, a new BMW that shouldn't have been affordable given her financial situation. Another red flag. Mom answered the door with a hopeful smile. "Sadie, come in. We've just made coffee." The living room was exactly as I remembered. Family photos lined the mantel, mostly of Amanda with a token few including me. They'd added several new ones of Amanda, but none of me from the past 5 years. It was as if I'd ceased to exist when I stopped being useful. Amanda sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. She looked up briefly, her expression unreadable. "Hey." "Hi, Amanda." I took a seat across from her, placing my portfolio on the coffee table. Dad entered with a tray of coffee cups. "We're so glad you came, Sadie. We knew you'd make the right decision." Their assumption that my presence meant agreement was telling. I accepted a cup of coffee and opened my portfolio. "I've spent the week analyzing Amanda's financial situation and researching options," I began. Mom beamed. "That's our Sadie, always so thorough." I continued professionally. "Based on the information you provided and additional research, I can see several paths forward. However, selling my house isn't one of them." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What do you mean?" Dad's voice hardened. "I mean, I'm not selling my home, but I am offering help." I laid out my findings. Amanda's debt was actually closer to $310,000 when everything was accounted for. Some of her financial activities bordered on fraud, particularly how she'd obtained business loans. Bankruptcy was likely inevitable, but with proper guidance it could be managed to minimize long-term damage. I've compiled resources for credit counseling, legal assistance for the tax issues, and a step-by-step plan for how Amanda can begin rebuilding once the bankruptcy is complete. I slid a folder toward my sister. "I'm willing to pay for the credit counseling and legal consultation." Amanda hadn't spoken, but her face flushed with anger. Mom looked bewildered, and Dad's expression darkened dangerously. "That's your help," he demanded. "Paperwork. We need money." "Sadie, not financial literacy pamphlets." "No," I corrected calmly. "What Amanda needs is to face consequences and learn financial responsibility. What you need is to stop enabling behavior that's destroyed your retirement and now threatens your home." "How dare you judge us?" Mom's voice rose. "We've supported our daughter through difficult times, which is more than I can say for you. And where has that support led to $310,000 in debt and the potential loss of your home? That's not support, that's enabling." Amanda finally spoke, her voice bitter. "Easy for you to say from your perfect house with your perfect job. Not everyone can be Miss Perfect like you, Sadie." The familiar accusation stung, but I recognized it now for what it was: deflection and jealousy. "This isn't about perfection, Amanda. It's about choices and consequences. I've made choices that led to financial stability. You've made choices that led to debt. I'm offering to help you make better choices moving forward." "You think you're so much better than us," Dad spat. "You forget where you came from. We gave you everything." And there it was, the heart of the matter. My success challenged their narrative. If I could succeed without their support, it meant Amanda's failures weren't just bad luck, but poor choices they had facilitated. "You cut me out of this family for 5 years because I wouldn't give Amanda money," I reminded them quietly. "And now you're back only because you want my house. This isn't about family for you. It's about using me as a financial safety net." Mom began to cry. Dad's face turned purple with rage, and Amanda stared at her phone, avoiding eye contact. "You've become cold," Mom sobbed. "Success has made you forget what matters." I felt a strange calm settle over me. "No, Mom. I've become clear about what matters: respect, reciprocity, and genuine care. None of which I've received from this family." I set my coffee cup down, carefully maintaining my composure despite the storm of emotions inside me. 5 years of silence followed by this demand had clarified everything. "I won't be selling my house," I stated firmly. but I am offering genuine help that addresses the actual problem. Amanda needs financial counseling, not another bailout. You all need to recognize that throwing money at her problems hasn't helped and never will. Dad slammed his hand on the coffee table. We're your family, after everything we've done for you. The irony was almost laughable. What exactly have you done for me in the past 5 years? Or even before that, you used my college fund for Amanda's mistakes. You dismissed my achievements while celebrating her smallest efforts. You cut me out completely when I set one boundary. We always knew you were jealous of your sister, Mom said, shaking her head sadly. This isn't jealousy. This is self-preservation. I turned to Amanda. I'm willing to help you learn financial management. I'll pay for credit counseling and legal advice for the tax issues. But I won't give you money that disappears into a black hole of poor decisions. Amanda finally looked at me, tears streaming down her face. You think you're so perfect. You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow, always being compared to Saint Sadie, who never makes mistakes. That's not fair, Amanda, I replied softly. I've made plenty of mistakes. The difference is, I've had to face consequences for mine. You never have. So you're punishing me now? Kicking me when I'm down? No, I'm offering you what you actually need instead of what you want. There's a difference. I stood up gathering my materials. The offer stands. Credit counseling, legal advice, and my expertise in creating a financial recovery plan. But not my house. Never my house. Mom was openly weeping now. Dad stood blocking my path to the door. If you walk out that door without agreeing to help your sister financially, don't ever come back, he threatened. You're choosing money over family. I looked him directly in the eyes. No, I'm choosing self-respect over exploitation. And I'm choosing to be part of a family that values me for more than my financial assets. I've built that family elsewhere. I walked around him toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. It was Thanksgiving 5 years ago all over again, except this time I felt no guilt, only relief. As I drove home, tears finally came, not for what I was losing, for what had never really existed. The unconditional love I'd sought from them had always been conditional on my usefulness to Amanda. The next morning, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Amanda. Can we talk, just us? No Mom and Dad? She asked, her voice subdued. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. The coffee shop was busy with Sunday morning customers when Amanda arrived. She looked different somehow, smaller, less confident than she had at our parents' house. She ordered a simple black coffee instead of her usual complicated specialty drink. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What did you want to talk about? I kept my tone neutral, protective barriers firmly in place. Amanda stared into her coffee. They're furious with you. Dad threw your folder in the recycling. Mom cried all night. And you, how do you feel? She looked up, surprise flickering across her face as if no one had asked about her feelings before, only her wants. Honestly embarrassed, angry, scared. She paused. Jealous of you, if I'm being totally honest. The admission hung between us. I never understood how you did it, she continued. How you became so independent, so together. It seemed like you were born knowing how to adult, and I just never got the manual. It wasn't natural, Amanda. It was necessity. No one was going to catch me if I fell, so I learned not to fall. They always caught me, she acknowledged. Every single time. And look where that got me. She pulled out her phone, opened a banking app, and slid it across the table. The negative balance made me wince. I've never had a positive balance for more than a week, she admitted. I don't even know how people live within their means. It's like a foreign language. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of self-awareness in my sister. Not complete understanding, but a crack in the entitlement that had defined her for so long. The resources I brought yesterday could help with that, I offered cautiously. That's why I wanted to meet. I actually looked at them after you left. The bankruptcy information, It sounds awful, but also like maybe a fresh start. I just don't know where to begin. We spent the next 2 hours going through the basics of financial literacy. Concepts so fundamental, I'd known them since high school, but that Amanda had never been taught. How interest compounds, why minimum payments on credit cards are a trap, how to create a basic budget. Mom and Dad won't like this, she said as we prepared to leave. They want a quick fix, not a long process. This isn't about them, I replied. It's about you taking control of your life. Can I call you sometimes? With questions, I mean, I get if you don't want to. After everything. The request was small but significant. Not for money, not for bailouts, but for knowledge. Yes, I said. You can call me with questions. True to my prediction, my parents were not supportive of Amanda's decision to work with me on financial literacy rather than accept a bailout. A week later, I received a lengthy email from Dad accusing me of turning Amanda against them and caring more about money than family. I didn't respond. Some wounds are too deep for words to heal. Over the following months, Amanda and I built a cautious relationship. She filed for bankruptcy with the help of an attorney I recommended. She moved out of her expensive apartment into a shared living situation. She got a steady job for the first time in her adult life. There were setbacks. Old habits resurfaced. Sometimes she called me crying, wanting the easy way out. Sometimes she missed our scheduled financial check-ins. But slowly, incrementally, she began to change. My parents remained distant. Occasional texts from Mom asked about Amanda's progress, but never about my life. I maintained firm boundaries, engaging only on my terms. The house they wanted me to sell became even more precious to me. Each mortgage payment, each improvement project, each garden harvest reinforced what I'd built for myself. Not just financial security, but a life on my own terms. The family I'd created around me, friends who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges, proved that blood relationships aren't the only ones that matter. Sometimes the family you choose is more nurturing than the one you're born into. Standing firm against my parents' demands was the final step in a journey that began when I was a child, learning self-reliance. It wasn't easy, and the pain of their conditional love still surfaces sometimes. But I found peace in knowing my worth isn't tied to what I can provide for others. If you're facing similar pressures from family who see you as a resource rather than a person, remember this: you have the right to protect what you've built. True love doesn't come with financial demands attached. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to say no to enabling and yes to genuine support. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family over money? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to protect their own boundaries. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. And remember, the family you build can be just as meaningful as the family you're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own journey toward healthy relationships and self-respect.